When we think of danger in human form, most of us picture the psychopath, the serial killer in a Netflix documentary, the violent criminal splashed across the evening news, or the cold-blooded villain in our favorite movies. We've been conditioned to believe that the greatest threats are the people who show their darkness openly. But here's the truth. The ones who scare us most are often not the ones who hurt us most. Psychopaths, for all their brutality, often reveal themselves. They get caught. They end up in prisons, in courtrooms, or on the front page of newspapers. They are visible. The real danger often comes from those who slip beneath the radar, sociopaths. Unlike the psychopath who brandishes a knife, the sociopath wears a smile. They blend in. They manipulate in silence. They destroy reputations, families, and even entire organizations, not through force, but through deception, charm, and quiet control. And what makes them so terrifying is that you may already know one. It could be the colleague who undermines you in the shadows, the partner who gaslights you until you doubt your own sanity, the friend who twists loyalty into leverage. Sociopaths don't just attack from the outside, they infiltrate from within. So in today's video, we're going to explore 5 powerful reasons why sociopaths are actually more dangerous than psychopaths. But more importantly, we'll look at this through the lens of Stoic philosophy, a timeless guide that can help us protect our minds, our peace, and our dignity when we encounter people who live without conscience. Because here's the thing. The Stoics believe that we cannot control what others do, but we can control how we respond. And when dealing with sociopaths, that inner discipline is not just helpful, it's essential for survival. Think about it. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to realize later that they had been using you all along? That sick feeling of betrayal. It lingers far longer than the memory of someone shouting at you in anger. A violent outburst is obvious, but subtle manipulation. It seeps into your mind like poison in water. Harder to detect, harder to fight. That's why sociopaths are so dangerous. And if we want to protect ourselves, we can't just rely on fear or avoidance. We need wisdom. We need clarity. We need the armor of reason, the way the Stoics taught. So let's begin this journey. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths, you'll also walk away with a stronger mindset. A mindset built on the Stoic principle that while we cannot choose the world we live in, we can choose the fortress we build inside ourselves. The question is, are you ready to see through the mask? So let's dive into the first reason why sociopaths are far more dangerous than psychopaths. The art of camouflage. You see, psychopaths are often easy to spot. They don't care about fitting in. Their coldness, their violence, their disregard for rules, it usually surfaces sooner or later. But sociopaths, they are actors on the grandest stage. They don't just wear masks, they become the masks. They can look like the most charming person in the room, the one who remembers your birthday, who maintains perfect eye contact, who offers to help you move furniture when no one else shows up. And in that moment, you think, wow, this person really cares. But here's the chilling truth. That kindness may not be kindness at all. It's calculation. Every smile, every gesture, every display of empathy is carefully designed to disarm you, to make you lower your guard, to make you trust them. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Appearances are often deceptive." And nowhere is that more true than with the sociopath. Because while they wear the costume of generosity and empathy, underneath there is no conscience guiding them, only strategy. Imagine this. A new coach joins your child's sports team. He's encouraging, attentive, seems to know everyone's name by the second practice. Parents feel grateful. They say things like, Finally, someone who truly cares about the kids. But slowly, behind the scenes, he begins to pit parents against one another, whispering small criticisms, creating division. By the time the truth comes out, if it ever does, he has already gained trust, influence, and power. That's the sociopath's art of camouflage. They don't storm the gates. They're invited in. And here's the question I want you to sit with. How many times have you doubted yourself because someone seemed too good to be bad? How many times have you silenced that quiet inner alarm because you thought, no, maybe I'm just being paranoid? This is exactly how sociopaths thrive. Victims doubt themselves. And when they finally gather the courage to speak up, others rush to defend the sociopath. No way. Not him. He's one of the nicest guys I know. Why does this happen? Because sociopaths weaponize normalcy. They hide in plain sight, often in roles that naturally earn our trust. Teachers, mentors, community leaders, even family members. By the time the mask slips, it's often too late. Damage has been done, reputations destroyed, lives quietly unraveled. So what do we do? The Stoics would remind us. Do not fear appearances, but question them. Do not rush to believe the surface of things. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The first step, don't be deceived by appearances. Second, always direct your actions with justice and truth." In practice, this means learning to trust, not the performance of charm, but the consistency of character. Words can be rehearsed, gestures can be faked, but patterns of behavior, over time, they reveal truth. I'll be honest with you. I once worked with someone who seemed like the most supportive colleague, always smiling, always checking in, always complimenting my work. At first, I thought I had found an ally. But slowly, little inconsistencies appeared. Things they said behind closed doors that didn't match what they said in public. Praise that turned into subtle undermining. And when conflicts arose, I noticed they never took responsibility. Looking back, I realize I wasn't dealing with a good person who occasionally slipped up. I was dealing with someone who knew how to wear a mask. And the moment I stopped judging them by their charm and started judging them by their patterns, the truth became clear. This is why sociopaths are so dangerous. They don't scare us away with violence. They draw us in with trust. They don't announce their presence with rage. They whisper their way into positions of influence. And because their camouflage looks so much like kindness, most people never suspect a thing until it's too late. The Stoic lesson here is this: hold fast to discernment. Don't dismiss your instincts, but temper them with observation. Trust may be given, but only carefully, only after time has revealed consistency. A mask can be worn for a day, a week, even a year, but sooner or later, the truth always reveals itself. And when it does, the strongest defense is not anger or revenge. It is clarity. The ability to see the person for who they are, without illusion, without self-deception. Because once you see the camouflage, it no longer has power over you. And this brings us to the next reason. Sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. Reason 2. Psychological warfare. If camouflage is the way sociopaths get close, then psychological warfare is the way they take control. And this is what makes them so devastating. Unlike the psychopath who strikes with violence, the sociopath strikes with confusion. They don't break bones. They break trust. They don't spill blood. They plant doubt. And in many ways, that wound is far harder to heal. Picture this. You're at work. There's tension in the team. Two colleagues who used to get along suddenly mistrust each other. Misunderstandings appear out of nowhere. Rumors spread, but no one knows who started them. And somehow, the same person keeps stepping in to calm things down, to offer peace. Everyone begins to see them as the mediator, the glue holding the group together. But here's the twist. That mediator is the one who lit the fire in the first place. That is sociopathic psychological warfare. Sociopaths excel at stirring conflict without ever appearing responsible. They use a tactic psychologists call emotional triangulation, telling one person one thing, another person something else, and then stepping back to watch the chaos unfold. It's like pulling invisible strings while pretending to be the only one not tangled in the web. They thrive in the shadows of confusion, because confusion is power. When people are at odds with each other, they can't see clearly. And when you can't see clearly, you become dependent on the one who appears to have clarity, the sociopath. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The sociopath wants the opposite. They want you to lose that power, to second-guess your own instincts, to become so entangled in doubt that you start looking outward for answers instead of inward. And when that happens, they own you. Have you ever been in a relationship where you started doubting your own memory? Maybe you said, "I'm sure we talked about this," and the other person snapped back, "No, that never happened. You're imagining things." At first, you brush it off, but after weeks, months, maybe years of this, you begin to question your own mind. That's gaslighting, and it's one of the sharpest tools in a sociopath's arsenal. I'll share something personal. Years ago, I had a friend who was incredibly charming, the life of every gathering. But behind closed doors, he would plant little seeds of division, telling me one thing about another friend, then telling them the opposite. For months, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. People I trusted suddenly seemed distant. Conversations I remembered clearly, others swore never happened. I started thinking, is it me? Am I the problem? And that's exactly the point. When the sociopath wins, the victim doesn't just lose trust in others, they lose trust in themselves. And once you no longer trust yourself, you are at your most vulnerable. Think about your own life for a moment. Has there ever been someone who seemed to leave chaos in their wake, yet always managed to look innocent? Someone who seemed to be the solution, when in fact, they were the source? If so, you've already glimpsed the psychological warfare of the sociopath. Why is this so effective? Because human beings are wired to seek harmony. We want to trust. We want relationships to work. When conflict arises, most of us assume it's a misunderstanding. But sociopaths exploit that goodwill. They create misunderstandings, then offer themselves as the bridge. And in doing so, they make themselves indispensable. It's like a firefighter who secretly starts the blaze, then shows up with a hose so everyone praises their bravery. So what can we do? The Stoics teach us that the first line of defense is perception. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The sociopath wants you to react emotionally, to get angry, to panic, to doubt. But the Stoic response is to pause, to observe, to resist being pulled into the storm. Here are 3 simple practices the Stoics would recommend. 1. Guard your perception. Before you react to gossip, rumors, or manipulation, step back. Ask yourself, what are the facts I know for certain? What is just hearsay? 2. Look for patterns, not moments. Anyone can make a mistake or miscommunicate once, but when confusion and drama always seem to circle around the same person, Pay attention. As the saying goes, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. 3. Don't outsource your judgment. The sociopath thrives when you rely on their version of events. The Stoic thrives when they rely on reason, on their own eyes, on their own mind. Remember, a sociopath cannot control your soul. They can stir chaos around you, but they cannot make you abandon your reason unless you hand it over. That's why Marcus Aurelius also said, "You have within you something stronger and more divine than the things that affect you and make you dance like a puppet." You are not a puppet. You can cut the strings. Psychological warfare is terrifying because it's invisible. It doesn't leave bruises, but it can scar the mind. And yet, once you learn to see the tactics, the triangulation, the gaslighting, the carefully staged chaos, you begin to see the pattern. And once you see the pattern, the spell is broken. Because the greatest weapon of the sociopath is not their manipulation. It's our blindness to it. The moment you choose clarity over confusion, the moment you refuse to doubt your own reason, their power collapses. And this brings us to the third reason sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. Their ability to drain not just your trust, but your very energy. Let's talk about that next. Reason 3. Networks of manipulation. If psychological warfare is how sociopaths weaken individuals, then their true power emerges when they build networks of manipulation. Because unlike psychopaths, who often operate in isolation, sociopaths thrive by recruiting others. They don't just deceive people, they organize them. They build circles of loyalty, alliances of influence, entire webs designed to protect them and disarm their victims. Think about the last time you saw a toxic workplace. Maybe it started with one manipulative leader, but soon you noticed certain employees always seemed to take their side. Not because they were bad people, but because they were convinced, pressured, or charmed into loyalty. Before long, the manipulator didn't just stand alone. They had a shield of allies, ready to defend them and dismiss anyone who raised concerns. That is how sociopaths turn lies into fortresses. Sociopaths know that one voice can be questioned, but if they can gather 5 voices, 10 voices, even a room full of voices repeating their version of the truth, they gain credibility. They do this by exploiting the things that make us human, our empathy, our ambition, our fear, even our sense of morality. They'll frame themselves as the victim to gain sympathy. They'll flatter someone's ambition, promising opportunity and influence in return for loyalty. They'll subtly spread fear. If you're not with me, you'll be against me. And people fall in line. Or they'll present their manipulation as a noble cause, twisting morality so others feel they're doing the right thing by supporting them. In short, they recruit. And once they've built their network, their victims are left alone, isolated, doubted by everyone else. The Stoics warned us about this too. Epictetus taught, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, if you stand against a crowd, you may be ridiculed, ignored, even attacked. But truth is not determined by the majority. It's determined by reality. And this is the cruel brilliance of the sociopath. They create a majority. They shape the narrative so that when the victim finally speaks out, others say, "That doesn't sound right. He's such a good man. She's always been so kind." The victim is silenced not by direct attack, but by disbelief. Let me give you an example. A woman I once knew worked under a charismatic non-profit leader. Outwardly, this leader was beloved, generous, passionate, deeply admired in the community. But behind the scenes, he bullied staff, manipulated finances, and pressured people into silence. When she finally spoke up, do you know what happened? Nobody believed her. Not because she was lying, but because the leader had already built a network of defenders. donors who adored him, colleagues who owed him favors, volunteers who thought he was a saint. Her voice was drowned out by the chorus he had cultivated. And here's the most chilling part. When sociopaths achieve this kind of influence, they don't even need to defend themselves anymore. Their network does it for them. Now ask yourself, have you ever seen someone like this in your own life? Maybe at work, in a family, in a community group. Someone who always seemed to have allies, no matter how much chaos surrounded them. Someone who could do wrong, but still walk away untarnished because people lined up to protect their image. If you have, you've seen the power of sociopathic networks of manipulation. Why is this tactic so dangerous? Because as human beings, we crave belonging. We want to be part of the group. Standing against the crowd feels terrifying. The sociopath knows this. They use it to isolate their victims. By cutting them off from support, by turning others against them, they make the victim doubt not just themselves, but reality itself. And when your reality is denied by everyone around you, that's one of the loneliest places a person can be. So how do we defend ourselves? The Stoics would say, accept what is within your control and release what is not. You cannot control the opinions of others. You cannot force people to see the truth if they are unwilling. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, be indifferent to what makes no difference. And the opinions of others, no matter how loud, no matter how numerous, do not determine your worth or your truth. This doesn't mean you shouldn't seek allies of your own or speak the truth when you must, but it means you do not depend on approval to validate reality. Your strength must come from within, from your values, your integrity, your clarity of mind. I'll never forget a time early in my career when I clashed with a manipulative manager. I was young, idealistic, and I believed truth would speak for itself. But he was experienced. He knew how to win people over. Soon he had colleagues, even supervisors, seeing me as difficult, simply because I refused to bend. For a long time, it broke me. I thought, if everyone sees me this way, maybe they're right. Maybe I am the problem. But then I remembered the Stoic principle. Stand firm in your values, even if you stand alone. Slowly, I realized, truth doesn't need majority approval. It needs consistency. Eventually, the truth surfaced, as it always does. But in those dark months, the Stoic reminder kept me sane. I cannot control their opinions. I can only control my actions. This is the shield the Stoics offer us. Detachment from the need for approval. When you stop begging others to believe you, when you stop needing the crowd to validate your truth, the sociopath's network loses its grip. They can manipulate appearances, but they cannot touch your inner fortress unless you let them in. So if you ever find yourself isolated, doubted, surrounded by voices that dismiss you, remember, you are not defined by their opinions. You are defined by your choices, your values, your character. That is the ground the Stoics stood on, and that is the ground that no manipulator can take from you. And this brings us to the fourth reason sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. Their relentless ability to drain your energy, not just your trust, not just your reputation, but the very strength you need to live. Let's explore that next. Reason 4. Targeting vulnerabilities. If building networks of manipulation is how sociopaths gain power, then what they do next is even more insidious. They target vulnerabilities. And this perhaps is their cruelest weapon. Because it's not random. Sociopaths don't just manipulate anyone. They deliberately seek out those who are already wounded, already struggling, already carrying heavy burdens. Think about it. Who is more likely to fall for a manipulator? Someone surrounded by support, confident in themselves and standing on firm ground. Or someone going through a divorce, grieving a loss, feeling lonely, or barely making ends meet. It's obvious. A predator always goes for the easiest prey. And sociopaths are predators of the mind and heart. They study people carefully. They watch for the cracks in the armor, financial stress, heartbreak, insecurity, self-doubt. Then they swoop in, not as an enemy, but as a savior. They don't come with knives or threats. They come with comfort, with attention, with love. At least that's what it looks like. But here's the reality. Their affection is conditional. Their approval is transactional. And their loyalty exists only as long as you serve their purpose. Think of a grieving widow who meets someone new. He showers her with affection, listens to her stories, tells her she's strong and beautiful. For the first time in months, she feels alive again. But slowly, he begins to withhold that affection. A compliment turns into criticism. Support becomes control. She starts to wonder, what did I do wrong? Why doesn't he love me like he used to? That's the sociopath's game. They don't break you all at once. They chip away at your confidence piece by piece until you no longer trust your own judgment. We've seen this play out even on the public stage. Take Britney Spears' case, for example. At her lowest, struggling with fame and personal turmoil, her vulnerabilities were exploited through legal and personal control. She was painted as incapable of making her own choices, and those who claimed to care for her held power over her life, finances, and freedom. It's a stark reminder that even those with fame and wealth are not immune when someone targets their vulnerabilities. And I want you to ask yourself, have you ever been in a situation where someone's love or approval felt like it had strings attached? Where you realized that affection could be given one moment and withheld the next, depending on whether you obeyed? That's not love, that's control. The Stoics would say, if your worth depends on another person's approval, you've already surrendered your freedom. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And what lies beyond our control? The moods, affections, or judgments of others. You can't control whether someone decides to love you today and abandon you tomorrow. You can't control whether a manipulator praises you one moment and tears you down the next. But you can control your mind, your values, your choices. That is where true power lies. Consider a young professional with a mentor who seems to genuinely care. The mentor gives advice, opens doors, creates opportunities. But over time, the help becomes suffocating. Every choice the protégé makes is questioned. Every success is reframed as the mentor's doing. Affection and praise only come when the protégé follows the mentor's script. Step out of line, and suddenly, approval is gone. This is classic sociopathic targeting. It's not about guidance. It's about control disguised as care. And for the victim, it feels impossible to break free because their self-worth has been quietly tied to that person's validation. Why do these tactics succeed? Because as humans, we long to be seen, loved, and valued. When someone offers that, especially during a time of weakness, we cling to it. But the sociopath twists that longing into a leash. They rewrite reality, making you believe you're dependent on them, when in truth, they've been dependent on your vulnerability all along. So how do we fight back? The Stoics give us the answer. By rooting our identity not in what others give us, but in what we choose for ourselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not the approval of a mentor, not the affection of a manipulative partner, not the shifting opinions of the crowd. Your thoughts, your values, your choices. That is your fortress. Here are 3 practices to protect yourself when vulnerabilities are exploited. 1. Know your anchors. Write down the values that define you: honesty, courage, compassion, resilience. When someone tries to manipulate you by withholding approval, return to those anchors. Ask, am I living by my values or chasing theirs? 2. Detach from conditional love. Real love, real friendship, real mentorship is never conditional. If someone's care comes with strings, recognize it for what it is: a trap, not a gift. 3. Reclaim your judgment. When someone makes you doubt your reality, pause and return to the evidence. Journaling, as the Stoics practiced, can be a powerful way to remind yourself, this is what I saw, this is what I felt, this is what I know. I'll admit, I've been there too. Years ago, during a difficult season in my life, I met someone who seemed to offer nothing but care. They listened when no one else did. They made me feel understood. But over time, their kindness became a weapon. My confidence eroded. I felt I couldn't make a decision without their approval. The day I realized what was happening was the day I took back control. I remembered the Stoic truth. I cannot control whether this person chooses to support me or criticize me, but I can control how I see myself. I can choose to live by my values, not their shifting conditions. And that was the beginning of my freedom. This is the heart of the matter. Sociopaths target vulnerabilities because they know that's where the walls are weakest. But weakness is not destiny. Vulnerability is not failure. In fact, the Stoics remind us that every wound can become wisdom. Every struggle can become strength, if we learn to stand firm in what is truly ours: our mind, our values, our choices. So the next time someone tries to exploit your pain, remember this: they can withhold affection, but they cannot touch your integrity. They can rewrite reality, but they cannot erase your reason. They can target your vulnerabilities, but they cannot own your soul unless you give it away. And that brings us to the 5th and final reason. Sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. Their ability to hide in plain sight for years, even decades, all while eroding lives from within. That's where we'll turn next. Reason 5. Avoiding accountability. We've seen how sociopaths camouflage themselves, wage psychological warfare, build networks of manipulation, and target vulnerabilities. But their most frightening weapon of all is this: they are masters at avoiding accountability. And this is what makes them so dangerous. Because no matter what damage they cause, no matter how many lives they quietly unravel, they almost always manage to walk away looking untouchable. Psychopaths often end up behind bars. Their violence leaves evidence. Their crimes are visible. But sociopaths, they exploit the shadows. They know exactly how to harm people in ways that leave no clear trace. It's like being punched in the dark. You feel the pain, but when you look around, no one else sees what hit you. Sociopaths are experts at staying just outside the reach of the law. They live in the gray zone between legality and morality. They may not commit crimes you can prove in court, but they commit emotional, psychological, and social violations that are every bit as destructive. How do they do it? They spread subtle misinformation, just enough to poison reputations without ever being caught in a direct lie. They provoke emotional reactions from their victims, then step back and point, saying, "See? Look how unstable they are." They manipulate authority figures, judges, police officers, even therapists, presenting themselves as calm, reasonable, and respectable, while painting their victims as irrational. It's a performance. and too often, the world applauds the wrong actor. Imagine this scenario. A woman is trapped in an abusive relationship. Her partner never hits her, never leaves a visible bruise. Instead, he chips away at her mind, gaslights her, controls her finances, isolates her from loved ones. Eventually, she breaks down in public, crying, shouting, maybe even lashing out. And when outsiders see this moment, what do they say? She's crazy. He's the calm one. This is how the sociopath flips the script. They orchestrate the chaos, then stand in the middle of it, looking like the victim, or worse, the hero. Have you ever been in a situation where you tried to explain someone's manipulation, but the more you spoke, the less people believed you? Maybe they said, "Are you sure? He seems so nice. She's always been so kind." That's the trap. The sociopath makes sure that when the truth comes out, it looks unbelievable. This is where Stoicism becomes our shield. The Stoics understood that chasing validation, trying to prove yourself to everyone, is a recipe for misery. Epictetus reminded his students, "If you wish to be free, do not wish for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do." In other words, stop trying to control what you cannot control. And one thing you cannot control is whether the world believes your story, whether people see through the sociopath's mask, whether authority figures choose truth over appearances. The Stoic way is to protect your energy, to prioritize peace over reputation, to stand firm in your values, even if the crowd misunderstands you. We see this in high-profile cases too. Some of the most notorious sociopaths in history weren't exposed by courts. They were exposed by time. For years, they appeared respectable, charming, even admirable. Only when the evidence stacked too high did people finally see the truth. But until that moment, their victims were dismissed, silenced, made to look unreasonable. And yet, the ones who survived were those who stopped trying to convince the world and focused instead on protecting their own sanity. Why are sociopaths so good at avoiding accountability? Because they understand human psychology. They know most people prefer a simple, comfortable story to a complex, uncomfortable truth. It's easier to believe that the calm, smiling person is innocent than to accept that the crazy one has been pushed to the edge by abuse. They also know how to exploit systems. A courtroom demands evidence. A therapist demands composure. A workplace demands professionalism. So they ensure that their abuse leaves no evidence, that they appear composed, that they remain professional, while their victims unravel under the weight of invisible wounds. So what can we do? The Stoics would remind us, reputation is external, peace is internal. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be indifferent to what makes no difference. If it is outside your control, it is not your concern." That doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue justice if you can. It doesn't mean you shouldn't speak truth. But it does mean this: do not let your soul be destroyed in the chase for validation. Sometimes the greatest act of defiance is to preserve your dignity, to refuse to let bitterness consume you, to live well despite the injustice. Here are 3 Stoic strategies to survive when sociopaths escape accountability. 1. Prioritize inner peace. Ask yourself, am I fighting to be believed? Or am I fighting to stay sane? If it's the former, you may never win. If it's the latter, you can always win. 2. Conserve your energy. Every hour spent trying to prove yourself to people who don't want to see the truth is an hour stolen from your healing. Redirect that energy inward, where it matters. 3. Stand in your integrity. A sociopath can smear your name, but they cannot stain your soul. As long as you act with justice, courage, and honesty, you remain free. I've been in that place myself, desperate to prove that someone was not who they pretended to be. I remember nights of replaying conversations in my head, gathering texts, rehearsing explanations. But the more I tried to convince others, the more drained I became. It was only when I remembered the Stoic truth, that my peace was mine alone, that I found strength. I stopped begging for belief. I stopped chasing justice from those who refused to see. And slowly, I reclaimed my energy. Ironically, in time, the truth revealed itself anyway. But by then, I was no longer desperate for it. I had already won, because I had my peace. This is the ultimate defense against sociopaths who avoid accountability. The refusal to let them define your reality. They can spread lies, but they cannot control your mind. They can manipulate appearances, but they cannot touch your values. They can escape responsibility in the eyes of others, but they cannot escape the truth that lives within you. And here's the promise the Stoics leave us with. If you stop chasing validation, if you anchor yourself in what is truly yours, your mind, your choices, your values, then no sociopath, no matter how cunning, can ever truly defeat you. And that brings us to the heart of this entire message. We've explored 5 reasons sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. Now, let's bring it all together and see how Stoic philosophy offers not just protection, but a path to lasting freedom. We've walked through 5 reasons why sociopaths are more dangerous than psychopaths. We've seen their camouflage, their psychological warfare, their networks of manipulation, their targeting of vulnerabilities, and their ability to avoid accountability. And now, as we close, I want to leave you with this. Knowledge is power. The greatest danger of a sociopath lies not just in their actions, but in our blindness to them. When we don't recognize the patterns, we become easy prey. But once you see clearly, once you understand the game, the illusion begins to crumble. Maybe as you listened, you thought of someone in your own life. A colleague, a family member, a partner, a leader. Maybe you remembered moments when you felt manipulated, doubted your instincts, or lost your confidence. And maybe for the first time, you're beginning to see those experiences through a different lens. Let me say this to you directly. You are not broken. You are not paranoid. You are not too sensitive. You are seeing clearly what others refuse to see. And clarity, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. The Stoics taught that resilience is born not from controlling others, but from mastering ourselves. Epictetus reminded his students, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This is the armor we must carry into a world where sociopaths exist. Because no matter how cunning, no matter how manipulative, they cannot touch the fortress within you unless you hand them the keys. And how do we keep that fortress strong? By practicing clarity, reason, and discipline over our emotions. By protecting our boundaries. By valuing peace of mind over the need for approval. Think of a ship at sea. The waves crash, the winds roar, storms rise without warning. You cannot calm the ocean, but you can strengthen the hull. You can train the crew. You can steer with reason instead of panic. And in doing so, you turn the storm from a threat into a test you are prepared to pass. That is the Stoic way. And that is how we outlast the sociopaths of this world, not by erasing them, but by refusing to let them sink us. So I ask you, where in your life do you need more clarity? What relationships demand sharper boundaries? And where have you been chasing approval when what you truly need is peace? Sit with these questions because the answers will become your shield. I'll tell you honestly, the times I've suffered most at the hands of manipulators were not when they acted, but when I ignored my own instincts, when I doubted myself, when I chose comfort over clarity. But the moment I began to see the patterns, the moment I chose reason over emotion, and the moment I stopped begging others to validate my reality, that was the moment I became free. And I promise you this, the same freedom is waiting for you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is the ultimate antidote to the sociopath's poison. They can twist appearances, but they cannot control your perception if you choose clarity. They can try to rattle your emotions, but they cannot dictate your response if you choose reason. They can try to make you doubt your worth, but they cannot touch your values if you anchor yourself in them. So here is my final message to you. Stay sharp. Learn the patterns. Knowledge is your shield. Stay stoic. Hold fast to clarity, reason, and inner peace. That is your armor. And stay safe. Not by living in fear, but by living in truth. Because when you see clearly, you are no longer a victim. You are no longer controlled. You are free. The sociopath's greatest power is deception. Your greatest power is discernment. And when you live with eyes wide open, when you choose reason over illusion, you reclaim what no manipulator can ever take from you, your peace of mind. So carry this wisdom with you. Stay sharp, stay stoic, stay free. If this message resonated with you, if it helped you see the world a little clearer, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might protect simply by spreading awareness. And if you'd like more content like this, lessons on resilience, clarity, and the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, make sure you subscribe and join this community. Together, we can learn how to live stronger, think clearer, and stay free from the games of manipulation. Remember, clarity is freedom, and wisdom is protection. Stay sharp, stay stoic, and above all, stay free.